Miami knocked Boston out of the playoffs. Brad Stevens said he didn't even think his team was going to play after the news of the Jacob Blake decision and what happened at the Capitol. At the last minute, they decided to. Jayson Tatum coming off the 40-point game. He had 27. Celtics up 7 with under 45 seconds to go. Duncan Robinson, yes, and the foul, a 4-point play. So the Heat cut it to 3. Next possession, Goran Dragic misses. Bam Adebayo. Back to Dragic, who fires again. The Heat scored 10 in the last 55 seconds to tie it. Ensuing possession. Marcus Smart driving. No. Hayden Pritchard left alone, and it swirls home for the game winner. The rookie from Oregon had just 6 points, but the biggest 2 right there. He's the hero. Celtics go on to win it 107-105, the final.
In Georgia, there are PACs like we talked about before, Stephen, a collective PAC and Black PAC. There's a church PAC. Like, all of these organizations work together in spite of COVID, in spite of over the holidays, in spite of people saying there's no way you're going to get the same level of turnout after this historic election. And they did. And Stacey has been organizing in Georgia for over a decade. They think she popped up for the gubernatorial race. No. She's been here and she's been doing the work. And to the point, athletes have been doing the same thing, knowing some of my friends who are athletes calling saying, what can I do? How can I get involved? Entertainers doing the same thing, trying to ensure that they're, again, using their voices, their platforms, and getting people to turn out. There was a huge event that When We All Vote held right before the election, a concert, and a bunch of people came on virtually for that. You know, this is a really tough time with COVID rates spiking all over the place, and people did not let it stop them. And I would also say we also have to acknowledge the voters. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't have been this historic change. So yes, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock have a lot to owe Stacey Abrams, but they got a lot to owe the voters, the athletes, the entertainers, and everybody who turned out in spite of everything we're facing right now.
And all of us who care about political commentary have a lot of debt to pay to you. We owe you for your time, your sincerity, your substantive commentary. We appreciate you so much, Angela. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We got a lot more to get into, Max. We're going to have Damian Woody here any second. I think he's ready to go. We saw NBA players locking arms last night, taking a knee, obviously giving a voice to this particular issue, which is near and dear to their heart because it was reminiscent of what transpired in an odd way yesterday, because when they saw white individuals storming the state capitol, inside the nation's capital, and folks not being harmed, and you juxtapose that to Black Lives Matters and others marching anywhere, we all know that the results were different then. We all know that the results would have been different yesterday if there were a bunch of black people that had stormed the nation's capital and endangered the lives of elected officials. We have Damian Woody here right now. The only thing I want to say before I get to Damian Woody was this, Max. You talked about people foment. You mentioned Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, other conservative hosts, whatever. Here's my position on that. I don't look at things as simplistic as that. I'm not accusing you of doing that, Max. What I'm saying is this. People having a hardcore belief in philosophical beliefs, politics, policy, etc., does not mean that you're fomenting and stirring up stuff like that yesterday when you compare that to what transpired with the president and his rally. I heard Mark Levin literally, vehemently speaking against violence of any kind, and he's been doing it for years. I heard Sean Hannity do the same. I heard numerous conservative hosts doing the same. I don't always agree. I'm not a conservative, but I am going to be fair, because if we're going to say that about them, there's folks on the left who stir stuff too. And if we're going to accuse one, we need to make sure we accuse the other, or don't accuse anybody.
No, but I think that both sidesism is dangerous and has been dangerous over the last 4 years. In fact, when Trump was crying and being a sore loser about losing, as he did in the Iowa caucus with Ted Cruz, and say, oh, it's fraud and we have to redo it or we shouldn't count it, and he did it again, when he marks January 6th and then sends the mob in that direction, right? Leading up to that, folks who are susceptible to those kind of lies and low-quality information, those folks look to people like some of the conservative, so-called conservative commentators that you mentioned. Wait a minute. And if what they hear is there was election fraud when in fact there wasn't, when that things aren't legitimate, when in fact they are. They take those cues, and they're more susceptible to the low-quality information. I just want to say quickly, and I know, Damian, we're going to get to you right now. A lot of it, Stephen A., seems to me to be about keeping black people in their place. Starting the Tea Party, a reaction to Obama.
Well, I agree with
Kamala Harris.
I agree with that.
White House, a woman of color. But I just want to finish this thought.
I agree with that, but I don't attach it to a party.
What I saw yesterday.
There's too much that's going on in this country. As a black
person,
but
it is attached to
a lot of different areas.
It is attached to a party. There are good people like Mitt Romney, who's a patriotic American.
Hell no.
And I wouldn't accuse Mitt Romney of that. Like, thank you, Mitt Romney. But it is largely attached to one party right now, and that goes back to the Southern strategy, a political. I just want to get this thought out real quick. What I saw,
you're getting a lot of thoughts out, but it's one-sided.
One of the images that I saw, or two of them that I saw that bothered me, was the black cleaning crew coming up and cleaning up the mess in the state capitol building that the white people made and then left. And then today, seeing the images of some of those same white people hanging out in the hotel lobby over drinks, talking about, presumably, what they had just done, maskless, by the way.
All right, let's go to Damian. Damian, your thoughts about what you saw yesterday, because even though they were basketball players, you're a football player. You were a football player, a two-time Super Bowl champion as well. You're a professional athlete, highly intelligent. You know what's going on in this world. What did you make of what you saw yesterday?
Well, listen, Stephen A., Max, I was like everyone else, just highly disgusted at the visuals that I saw on television. I was watching those things happening, literally unfolding with my kids and everyone in the house, and for me, I'm sitting watching lawmakers and pundit after pundit come on TV, and everyone echoing the same point, that this is not the America that I know. This is not the America I know. And that is false. That is a lie. Not only can we go back to the visuals from 2020 in the Black Lives Matter movement, where we clearly saw the touch and the force that law enforcement came at those protesters. But all we have to do is go back and look at the history of our country. Because I've always said, if you ignore or don't acknowledge it, we're bound to repeat it. Let me give you a couple examples. 1874, election riot in the Deep South down in Alabama, Vicksburg, Mississippi, Louisiana, literally committing a coup d'etat, overthrowing duly elected governments, all because of perceived grievances that things are changing, that there was election fraud. 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina, massacre. Again, duly elected government being overthrown by a mob for perceived grievances as to how they want their government to be ran. Okay, so these things keep happening. They've happened all throughout the history of our country. And what frustrates me is to see people go on TV or talk about this is not America. It is. We refuse to acknowledge what has been going on in our country for years. And until we, as a people, acknowledge the issues that we have, we cannot advance our democracy. Because let me tell you something. You have to fight for democracy. It doesn't just happen. We saw that down in Georgia. We saw the groundwork that people did down in Georgia to get people to turn out and vote. That's democracy. What we saw in Washington, D.C. yesterday at the Capitol building, that was anarchy. Complete anarchy. And I don't want to hear I don't want to hear both sidesism, because that's the first thing people want to throw out. Well, what about Black Lives Matter? And I'm not condoning everything that happened then. But the big issue that we saw yesterday is that there's a large swath of people in this country that refuse to accept the demographics, the things that are going on in our country. And let me tell you something, it's not going to stop. It is not going to stop unless people come to grips